Some people are born into war zones, not with guns and bombs, but with poverty, pain, and the kind of silence that breaks boys before they become men. Jamal Carter was one of those boys. Raised in the forgotten corners of Baltimore, he never knew the warmth of a mother's hug or the steady hand of a father's guidance. What he did have, though, was a friend, a brother in all but blood, named Darnell. Jamal and Darnell met in a group home when they were just 10. In a world where trust was currency and betrayal was expected, the two made a pact: ride or die. Darnell was the loud one, always cracking jokes. Jamal was quieter, the thinker, the observer. But together they moved like one body, one soul. Whether it was sneaking out past curfew or fending off bullies twice their size, they were inseparable. As teenagers, life got darker. The streets had rules, and they were cruel. Jamal tried to stay clean, but Darnell started running with the wrong crowd. Not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. His baby sister needed diapers, and his mom was lost in drugs. Jamal begged him to stop, but Darnell just smiled and said, "You'd do the same for me." And Jamal did. One cold night, the kind that chills your bones and steals your breath, everything changed. Jamal was with Darnell when a rival gang rolled up. Gunfire erupted. Screams echoed in the alley. When the smoke cleared, a body lay on the ground. One of the shooters, dead. The cops came fast, too fast, and when they couldn't find the killer, they found the easiest target, Jamal. The system didn't care about truth. It didn't care that Jamal had no gunshot residue, no motive, no record. It didn't care that Darnell, terrified and guilt-ridden, tried to confess. Jamal was 18, black, and poor. That was enough. He was sentenced to 15 years for second-degree murder. Behind bars, he changed. Not into a monster, but into something harder, stronger. He kept to himself, kept his head down. All he had left was the memory of Darnell's voice on the day of sentencing. "I'm sorry, man. I'll fix this. I swear." But Darnell never got the chance. Word came 2 years into Jamal's sentence. Darnell was dead, stabbed outside a liquor store. The police called it gang violence, another statistic. But prison has its own grapevine. Jamal learned the truth. The man who killed Darnell was here, in this very prison, breathing the same air, eating the same food, laughing with the same guards. Jamal had already lost his freedom. Now they had taken the only person who ever loved him. Something inside him snapped, not with rage, but with purpose. Quiet, cold, deadly. He wasn't thinking about revenge. He was preparing for war. Death wasn't just the loss of a friend. It was the shattering of Jamal's last connection to the outside world. Every day in prison, Jamal replayed their memories like a film reel stuck on repeat. He remembered the way Darnell used to smack him on the back of the head when he got too serious. How they'd talk about starting a business together, maybe opening a car shop once they got out of this mess. It was that dream, small, fragile, that kept Jamal sane behind bars. But then, one morning, everything changed. It started with a whisper in the cell block hallway. "Yo, you heard about Darnell? Darnell Brooks? He got dropped last night, outside some liquor store on 5th. At first, Jamal thought it was just prison gossip, twisted stories that spread like wildfire, fed by boredom and hate. But as the day wore on, more details surfaced. A stabbing, 3 wounds to the chest, broad daylight, no suspects, no arrests. Just another dead black man no one cared to investigate. Jamal didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat on his bunk, staring at the cracked ceiling as the world around him dimmed. The only person who had ever looked at him with real love was gone. And then came the name, Tyrone T-Rex Mills, a hardened gang enforcer with a reputation for doing dirty work without hesitation. The same man who'd once bragged about cleaning up the streets for the higher-ups in the crew. What sent shivers down Jamal's spine wasn't just hearing Tyrone's name. It was learning that he had just been transferred to the same prison, same block, same yard. A guard slipped Jamal a folded piece of paper. No name, no handwriting. Just one line scrawled in blue ink. "He's here." Darnell wasn't random. Jamal felt like the walls were closing in. Pieces started falling into place. Darnell had been trying to leave the gang life. He'd cut ties, stopped running packages, started working a legit job at a gas station. He wanted out, and that made him a threat. Tyrone had been the enforcer sent to make an example out of him. Now, Jamal wasn't just grieving. He was haunted. Every moment he'd spent with Darnell, every promise they made, it all turned to ash. And every time he saw Tyrone on the prison yard, laughing with his crew, living like nothing ever happened, that ash turned into fire. The kind of fire that burns slow, quiet, hidden beneath the surface. Jamal wasn't the type to lash out. He was methodical, calculated. If Tyrone thought he'd killed a ghost, he was wrong. Jamal was very much alive. And he was watching. And one day soon, he'd strike. There are moments in life that freeze time, when everything around you fades into silence, and all you hear is the thudding of your own heart. For Jamal, that moment came during chow. It was a Thursday. The cafeteria buzzed with the usual noise, metal trays scraping, half-muttered jokes, guards barking orders. Jamal moved through it all like a ghost, routine etched into his muscles. But as he slid his tray onto the table and looked up, his eyes locked onto a face he hadn't seen in years. Tyrone T-Rex Mills, older, heavier, same cold smirk stretched across his face like a scar. He was holding court at the far end of the room, surrounded by a small circle of men who either feared him or wanted to be him. He laughed like a man who knew he owned the room. Jamal's blood turned to ice. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The tray trembled in his hands as flashbacks slammed into his mind. Darnell's wide grin, their childhood plans, the whispered dream of freedom, and the image of his best friend lying in a pool of blood outside a liquor store. He knew it was him. No doubt, no mistake. But this wasn't the street. This was prison. A place where a wrong look could get you stabbed, and a single misstep could cost you your life. Revenge wasn't a simple option. It was a suicide mission. Back in his cell, Jamal couldn't sleep. He stared at the concrete wall for hours, his mind a battlefield of fury and fear. One side screamed for justice, for Darnell, for everything stolen from him. The other side warned him of the reality. If he made a move, he'd be buried in solitary, or worse, dead. Was it worth it? Would Darnell even want him to throw his life away? The next morning on the yard, Tyrone walked past him. Their eyes met, and for a second, time stopped again. Tyrone didn't flinch, didn't look away. He didn't recognize Jamal, just another face in a sea of prisoners. That made it worse. To him, Darnell's death was nothing. Just another job, just another name. That night, Jamal sat alone at the edge of his bunk, his fists clenched, his heart split in two. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life in the hole. But how could he live knowing the man who murdered his best friend was breathing easy just a few cells away? It wasn't about rage anymore. It was about principle, about honor, about making sure Darnell's name didn't fade away like dust in the wind. The war inside Jamal was over. He'd made his decision. He wasn't going to survive this place. He was going to own it, just long enough to do what had to be done. Revenge in prison isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It's slow, surgical. Every move has to be planned like a chess game, where one mistake means checkmate and death. Jamal knew this. He also knew Tyrone had eyes everywhere. The man was connected. Guards, gang members, snitches. A direct attack would be suicide. But Jamal wasn't looking for a fight. He was building a trap. Step 1 was invisibility. Jamal changed his rhythm. Ate alone, spoke less, no sudden movements, no attention. He became what the prison called a ghost. Someone who blended into the concrete, unnoticed and unremarkable. Guards ignored him. Inmates forgot he was there. While hiding in plain sight, he started gathering information. He learned Tyrone's schedule, when he showered, when he lifted weights, when he met with his people. More importantly, he found out where the blind spots were. places where cameras didn't quite reach, where guards took longer to patrol. And then came the weapon. In prison, making a knife, a shiv, isn't hard. The hard part is hiding it. Jamal scraped down a piece of metal from a broken vent over days, wrapped the handle with cloth from his sheets, and tucked it deep inside a hollowed-out Bible. Nobody checked Bibles. Weeks passed. Patience was key. Then the opportunity came. Tuesday, shower rotation. Jamal timed it perfectly. He got assigned to the same block rotation. The guards were distracted. 2 inmates had started a loud argument in the yard. One Jamal had quietly bribed with a month's worth of commissary. It worked like clockwork. In the steam-filled haze of the prison showers, Jamal walked in slow, calm, focused. The sound of water hitting tile masked his footsteps. Tyrone stood alone at the far end, humming some tune, soap in one hand, head down. He didn't see it coming. Jamal struck with the precision of a man who had rehearsed this moment in his head 1,000 times. The blade pierced Tyrone's kidney from behind, then again through the ribs. Silent, efficient. One last plunge to the neck. Tyrone dropped. No screams, just a thud, echoing in the steam. Jamal let the shiv clatter to the floor and walked out like nothing happened. The chaos came moments later, screams, guards rushing in, sirens blaring. But by the time they found Tyrone's body, Jamal was already back in his cell, face calm, hands clean. No witnesses, no camera footage, no motive anyone could prove. The prison went into lockdown. Rumors spread fast. Some said it was a rival gang hit. Others blamed the guards. But no one looked at the quiet man in the corner bunk. Jamal had done what he came to do, not for glory, not even for vengeance, for Darnell. And in the silence that followed, he finally felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. The murder investigation dragged on for weeks. Lockdowns became the new routine. Guards were on edge. Inmates were restless. But Jamal? He was patient. Killing Tyrone was only part of the mission. Now came the impossible. Escape. It had started as a fantasy, a way to keep sane. But after Tyrone's death, it became a necessity. He knew the prison wouldn't let the matter rest. Eventually, someone would talk, or the system would pin it on him. He had to disappear, permanently. Jamal had studied every inch of the prison over his years inside. The architecture, the shift changes, the blind spots, and most importantly, the tunnels. Old sewage lines, sealed off after a riot 10 years ago. Forgotten by most, but not by Jamal. He befriended an older inmate named Felix, a lifer who worked maintenance. Quiet man, smart. Felix had access to blueprints and, more importantly, a quiet grudge against the system. In exchange for silence, Jamal promised him something few could offer behind bars: purpose. Over the next month, Jamal played the game, kept his head down, filed metal scraps, smuggled rubber gloves, collected cleaning chemicals. With Felix's help, they loosened rusted bolts in an old drain hatch near the laundry room. It was tight, dark, foul, but it led somewhere. The night came when the prison was distracted again. Another fight, another lockdown. But this time, it was a diversion, one Jamal arranged. As the sirens blared and guards scrambled to restore order, Jamal slipped into the laundry chute. He hit the ground hard, bruised but breathing. He crawled through the drain hatch, body twisting through the suffocating tunnel, the smell of rust and rot burning his lungs. For 30 minutes, he moved in pitch black, guided only by memory and desperation. Finally, the tunnel ended, beneath a chain-link fence at the far edge of the prison grounds, covered in weeds and years of neglect. He pushed through, gasped as fresh air hit his face for the first time in over a decade. But freedom isn't a finish line, it's a razor-thin edge. Jamal disappeared into the night, barefoot, bleeding, and alive. Some say he caught a freight train out of state. Others believe he crossed into Canada with the help of an old friend. The guards never found a body, never got a name. The prison buried the story beneath red tape and silence. But every now and then, whispers float through the system, of a man who walks like a shadow, who lives off the grid, who sends money each year to a small family in Baltimore, Darnell's mother and little sister. Was it justice? Was it escape? No one knows for sure. But somewhere out there, a ghost lives free, and the system still doesn't know his name.